director at Barclays, and I've also worked at JP Morgan. So if you could please start with introducing yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Shrey. Thanks for having me on this podcast. I'm glad to be here. So, just to give a quick background on myself, after finishing my schooling in Jaipur, I moved to Calcutta to do my BCom honors from Xavier's. And after that, I completed my MBA from IIM Kozhikode. And then I started my first job in the year 2000 in Mumbai with CRISIL, which is a rating agency and Standards and Poor's subsidiary in India. So I worked there for a couple of years. And then after that, I moved to JP Morgan in India. And then after working there for a couple of years, they actually posted me to Hong Kong because there was an opportunity that came up. So I then moved to Hong Kong to join the loans capital markets team at JP Morgan. Uh, Worked there for a few years. And then in 2010, I moved to Barclays, again in the loan capital markets team, and worked there for about 9 years. And then in 2019, I left banking and I moved back to Jaipur. So
That's
that's sort
really
of a brief background on myself.
that's really great. How long have you been in the banking sector, and how have you evolved through those years?
Sure. So I think in investment banking, I would say I started from really 2004 onwards once I moved to Hong Kong. So it's about 15, 16 years that I did investment banking. Largely, I was doing loans business within the investment banking world, uh, but it also encapsulated covering some of the clients, in particular private equity clients, which again I'm not sure how many of you or the audience here would be familiar with, but they are sort of financial investors who buy companies and then after a few years they sell it at a
Yeah.
profit. So that's sort of their business model, and they are a big user of loans because they use loans to buy the other companies. So my work also sort of encapsulated covering some of those private equity clients. Um, what happened over the years is that different things sort of happened. Once I moved to Hong Kong, initially I was covering countries like Korea and sort of North Asia, and then slowly I evolved to India, then Southeast Asia, and then ultimately China. So that's sort of how my journey sort of happened.
Oh, that's really nice. The next question is, what are the key responsibilities and functions of a loan capital director? And how do you contribute to a firm's overall success?
Sure. So I think the key job or the key role of a loan capital markets director is really, you should think of it as a team leader. So there are two parties to any loan transaction. Obviously, there's a client who needs the money, which is a company, and then there's the bank who's going to provide the financing.
Yeah.
So I work for the bank, and I am facing the client. So that my primary role is to make sure that what client needs, I am able to deliver that. And that includes several things. So leading a team that does the due diligence on the company, that prepares the credit papers, that is, which is also the approval memos, and then go and get the approvals done at the within the bank's committee. So really, the director's main role is to act as the team leader to drive all parts of the transaction. So, for example, if company X has come to us to take a loan, then I would talk to them, understand what the requirements are. Then I'll go back, tell my team what they need to get done within what time frame, and then we go and get approvals, and then we deliver that to the client. So that's sort of the main role of a director at a loan capital markets team.
So you'd also need to like differentiate between what companies like you are like will be able to pay back the loan, credit, something like that.
Absolutely. That's a good point. So the key job is obviously to assess whether the company that you're lending to will be able to pay back the interest and the loan itself
Yeah.
within whatever the time frame of the loan is, let's say 3 years or 5 years or whatever it is. So that is what the due diligence part of the thing encapsulates. We go, we dig into the financials of the company, we talk to the management of the company, we form a view on the sector that they're in. Let's say it's a steel company, then we'll look at the steel sector, what the future looks like, and then look at the risks and the mitigants associated with that company itself. right? So no two companies within the same sector are equal, right?
Yeah.
So within the same steel sector, or let's talk about auto sector, right? A Tata Motors will be different than a Maruti,
Yeah.
right? So they all have individual strengths and weaknesses, and the job of the loans team and as a director of the loans team is to make sure that we are assessing the company appropriately so that we don't lose our money.
Okay. Um, as a like as an individual who also wants to pursue investment banking, I think we've all heard at a point that it's very busy, very time consuming, very like burdensome. Could you like elaborate on that part?
Yeah. Um, yeah, absolutely. I think you may have heard of people talking about 100-hour weeks,
Yeah.
which is a very popular terminology within the investment banking world. It's it's not false. It is actually true. So they've been giving you some anecdotes. There were times when I worked for 36 hours nonstop. There were times where for 5 days I did not have a hot meal because I just did not have time to have hot meals. I had to do with cold sandwich and a coffee. That's it. So yes, investment banking is extremely time consuming. But that's not the only aspect of it. I think it's a very high pressure job as well. I don't want to scare people, but I want to provide you with some reality here. It's also a very high pressure job in the sense that there are deadlines, and those deadlines are extremely, extremely critical. So more often than not, we have to deliver or we had to deliver within a very short period of time. And so that's why what you've heard about investment banking is absolutely true, that it does require a lot of hard work and it is a very high pressure job. Although I would say that over the last few years, 5 to 7 years, things have improved. I think all institutions have sort of taken a more cognizant view that people need some time off.
Yeah.
And so I think in particular, the junior level guys uh, who, if in, I think your words, slog it out a lot, uh, I think they do need a break. And so most of the banks have now become very, very careful as to how they handle human resources.
Right. The next question is, how is it like working at Barclays, and was it different than working at JP Morgan?
Yes and no. I think ultimately most of the investment banks sort of operate on the same sort of wavelength. Whether it's a Goldman, whether it's a Morgan Stanley, whether it's Barclays, JP Morgan, they all sort of have their own strengths and sort of weaknesses. Uh, yes, it was different in the sense that JP Morgan had certain strengths in certain areas within the loans world and within broader investment banking world, and Barclays had strengths in certain areas uh, compared to JP Morgan. So, giving you an example, when I joined JP Morgan, one of the key tasks that my boss at that time, when he hired me, he gave me was to develop the India market. Because at that time, JP Morgan had not done a single loan in the Indian space. So that was my first task that was given to me to develop the Indian market. When I joined Barclays, their strongest market was India. So they'd done most loans in Asia in India. So there the task was different. There the task was to do more China. There the task was to do more sort of leveraged loans. And when I say leveraged loans, it means a little bit more risky loans, and to do more sort of acquisition financing loans, which means when a company is looking to buy another company, then you provide money for that. So they both had their own strengths and weaknesses, but ultimately the way of working, the pressure, everything else sort of remained the same.
All right. Can you discuss any memorable challenges or successes you have encountered during your career?
Yeah, there've been many challenges, I would say. But one that really comes to mind, I think, is the Lehman crisis, which happened in 2007, 2008. Again, I don't know how many of you guys would be familiar with that because I'm sure you all would be like 1 or 2 years old that time.
Yeah.
Um, so Lehman was one of the top investment banks in the world, Lehman Brothers, right? It was a coveted place for any budding investment banker, right? Everyone wanted to join Lehman Brothers. And due to certain high risk transactions that they did, and I'll not get into details, they basically went bankrupt. And so they shut down. So what happened because of that? Because that time these transactions were largely done with other banks in the world, right? So they'd done transactions with Morgan Stanley, they'd done transactions with JP Morgan, with Barclays, everyone. So once they went under, the other banks sort of also felt the impact because they were also closely linked at that point in time. And so during 2007 and 2008, there was so many job cuts across the globe, not just US, not just Europe, but even in Asia. That it was, I think, in my whole, well, from 2000 to 2019 career, I think that was the most challenging time. So again, a funny anecdote now that I look in hindsight. So we used to sit like a trading desk. So like, we have a big platform and then we
Yeah.
have computers. And so they're like, we 6 or 7 people were sitting like in a row, right? That's how we were sitting in at that time. So when Lehman happened a month after, I was the fourth, right? The first one was fired. A week later, the second one was fired. A week later, the third one was fired.
Mhm.
And so you can imagine what is my state of mind, right, at that point in time. But luckily, things got sorted and I still had a job after that. So I would say that was one of the most challenging times.
Okay.
And there
What
was
are,
a second aspect to this question also, right?
yeah, any successes that
Oh,
memorable
right.
success?
Yeah. So I think, as I said, one of my key responsibility when I joined JP Morgan in Hong Kong was to develop the Indian market. So I would say that to me is very close to my heart, um, because we were able to do a lot of things in India once that team was set up. Once we started focusing on India, so we did the first loan, we did the second loan, and so we really developed the Indian market for JP Morgan. So that I would say was one of the key success factors for me. And then at Barclays, to develop the whole China market was again a very successful thing that we sort of achieved. So I would say there were a lot of successes, but I think these two sort of stand out.
What do you think are the most important qualities or skill that a person wanting to pursue a career in loan capital slash investment banking should possess, and how have you developed or honed these attributes in your career?
Sure. So I think let's talk about investment banking as a whole because there are different aspects to it. But at a high level, if you look at from a top level sort of thing, the key uh, factor is really to to not falter under pressure. I think, as we spoke about earlier, it's a very high pressure job, and a lot of time people sort of get saturated very quickly because it just is very strenuous. So, one, hard work is extremely, extremely important. Um, that's one. Two, time management, because there is always limited time to deliver the you know deal milestones. Like today, if you have to prepare the credit paper, then it has to be delivered today. If you have to prepare the financial model, it has to be done by today. So time management is extremely critical, which also sort of involves multitasking, right? You can't tell your boss that, look, I'm working on the financial model, so I cannot write the credit paper. That's not done. If you've been given a task, you have to do it. So multitasking, hard work, time management, those are really critical. And then overall, I think is just a need to be very up to date around what's going on in the global scenario. Because when we used to go and talk to the clients, they are very smart, right? They know what they're doing. They're basically operating their companies, right? We are not the operators of the company. So if I'm going and talking to an auto company, they would know how a car is made. I would not know that. So I have to show that I've done the research, I know some aspects of it, so that I can talk intelligently with them. Doesn't mean that I'm an expert, which they also know that we are not an expert, right? We're there to deliver other investment banking things. But you need to be very smart, you need to read up a lot. I think those are sort of the critical factors in terms of your own capabilities. And then lastly, but people generally forget, it's a very people driven business, investment banking, right? Because you're interacting with people. There are no machines. You have clients, you have people on the bank side, and then there's money exchanging hands, or you're doing IPOs, or you're doing deals. There's no machinery involved, or there's no tangible in that sense of product. So it's a very people driven business. Hence, a very, very important aspect of investment banking is to be able to relate to your clients to be able to relate to your own team members so that there is everyone works as a team to achieve the goal that they've been set out to do.
Yeah. How do you see technology shaping the future of banking, particularly in terms of digital transformation and fintech innovation?
Yeah, that's a space that I'm not at all comfortable with. But I would say how technology helped me during the course of my career, right? When I started, there were still occasions when I had to send faxes to clients because maybe we had emails, but the client side did not have emails at that point in time. So we had to sit there, send tons of paper through fax machines, which was, again, I don't know how familiar you guys are with fax machines, but it's usually slow. Um, to 2019, when I left, everything was done on emails, right? You want to send a document, attach it, and send it. So I think how technology evolved during the course of those 20-year period was to make communication very quick, make our jobs very efficient, because we are not spending time on doing basic stuff like sending messages, right? Or faxes. We're utilizing that time to do more higher end jobs. So I think technology helped in that manner. Secondly, technology also helped because there's a lot of data that we have to use in investment banking, right? So technology also helped us to manage our data in a much more structured manner, right? Giving simple examples like folders, subfolders, servers. So we could access data like 10 years past because we had it stored somewhere. So those things sort of helped from an operation standpoint. I and this is again my personal view. I don't think digital transformation or technology advancement is going to replace bankers.
Yeah.
Simply because, as I said before, it's a very people-driven business, right? Even if I'm doing a loan and financials are one part of it, maybe I can feed in the numbers in, I don't know, chat GPT equivalent of numbers or financials. And it'll throw me out some random grading or of a company, right? But there are so many other subjective things around it that a machine cannot do it. For example, taking a view on the management, right? A machine won't be able to do it, right? Whether this management is good, whether they are progressive, whether they are a fraud, that's something as a person, you will, when you go and meet them, you will get that sense. Two, taking a view on the sector, right? Machine will not tell you whether auto sector is going to grow or what. I mean, they'll give you some numbers, but how to interpret that number is what a human does. That's why I think technology is complementary. I think it is helping in making our jobs more efficient and easier, but it is not a replacement in
Yeah.
banking at least.
Looking ahead, what do you see as the biggest opportunity or challenges facing anyone entering the banking sector in the future?
Yeah, I think things have changed quite a bit since I sort of entered the banking sector. I think there are a lot of opportunities. I think uh, whether you talk about US, whether you talk about Europe, whether you talk about Asia, there's a lot of development happening everywhere, in particular in our part of the world, right? India, Southeast Asia, China was happening a few years ago. It's kind of slowed now. Uh, so anyone entering the investment banking segment would find a lot of opportunities. There will be business opportunities, there will be learning opportunities, uh, and there will be many new things and innovations that will come in. So I think there'll be a lot of opportunities for people who want to enter the sector. Having said that, I do feel that currently the investment banking sector as a whole is going through a lot of turmoil. And when I say that, you guys might have read about Credit Suisse,
Yeah.
how UBS acquired them. So that was a lot of, actually, my friends were also there who sort of lost their jobs. Um, so right now, a lot of challenges are also happening with the investment banking sector. One, the regulations are much more stricter. So banks have to operate a lot less creatively as what they were doing before. So for structuring, for example, structuring transaction previously, people could sort of find new ways of doing it. But now the regulations are so tight that you can't move too much from the path that you've been given. Um, so much more stricter regulations. Um, uh, Products have sort of become more like a commodity. So if you provide the cheapest pricing, then you win the mandate. Previously, it was more how creative you are, what else can you bring to the table. Now I think it's become a lot more straightforward or commoditized. And thirdly, I think what is impacting the investment banking world the most is the geopolitical issues around the world, right? Whether it's the war happening in Ukraine or the Middle East, and then China issues, and then obviously Europe going through a continued downturn since so many years. So the kind of deal flows that was being seen previously is not happening now, which means that every 6 months banks are cutting people. So right now, anyone who wants to enter investment banking world should keep that in mind that their jobs are not secure. They were never secure. Investment banking was always known to be very cutthroat, right? They were just very brutal. If you're not performing or if the market is down, they'll just cut you off. But now it's even worse because every bank is sort of reevaluating their strategies, their focus areas every 6 months or a year. And so maybe last year you might have done very well, but if the product that you're selling is not making sense, then you might lose a job. So that's, I think, the most critical challenge for any new person joining investment.
Um, you had said that you had gone to IIM, and after that you had joined like a post. Like, can you any tips on landing your first type of job after college or something like that?
So yeah, interesting story there as well. So I had a different job. So companies visited the campus for
Yeah,
final placements.
placements.
So I got a job in another bank at that time through the campus. But after I sort of took that job or I signed on that job, I was still in the campus because exams happen after that, and you're still at the campus itself. I got a call from my senior who was working with Crisil, who had joined Crisil a year ago, and he said, Crisil is looking for more people. Are you interested? But you have to come down to Mumbai, to do that interview. I said, yeah, sure. To be honest, unlike you guys who are very smart in who you know what you guys are talking about, I had no idea, right? What's the difference between the bank that I got a job from and Crisil, right? I just said, okay, I'll go to Mumbai, I'll talk to people there and figure it out. Um, so I went there, took my interview, and the same day they confirmed me. They said, okay, we'll give you a role here. So now I had this job from the campus and I had this job, right? Which I got in Mumbai. I took Chris's job because one, there was a senior there who gave me more pointers about what they really do, and that sort of appealed to my immature brain at that time. Uh, but secondly, they were also paying me slightly higher, and so when you're going for your first job, obviously
Yeah.
that was an attraction, right? Um, so that's how I got my first job. Uh, I lost out on a couple of other interviews because I just did not perform that well, and I don't think that suited my profile also. So I think uh, it was good to get a couple of jobs, but there were some others which I could not make through.
Many people associate the investment banking job like having like being very time consuming and stuff, but they often overlook it because of the higher pay, for example, and things like that. Is that true?
Yeah, I think so. I think investment banking pay is probably one of the highest paid jobs across all jobs in the world. Um, I mean, lawyers get paid at a high level also, private equity individuals get paid, fund managers get paid, but I think generally speaking, investment bankers do get paid well. Uh, yes, in a way, people look at that high pay as a mitigant for the time that they're spending on doing their work. So what you're saying is true, but I wouldn't just say that it's pay, right? Because if you're not cut out to do investment banking, if you're not cut out to take that kind of pressure, how much ever anyone pays you, you will not sustain, right? So you need to have that sort of ecosystem around you. You need to have that sort of mindset that I want to do this job. I want to be facing pressure every single day because I enjoy it. I want to travel twice every week because I enjoy traveling. Right? In my job, we used to travel a lot. I mean, I used to be on a flight almost every week. And we used to do day trips from Hong Kong to Beijing, which is a 4.5 hour flight. Go in the morning, come back in the night. So it does take a toll on your mental and physical sort of stamina. But money is not the only thing. It is a very, very important element. I wouldn't discount that at all. But you have to be cut out to do investment banking. If you're not, if your mindset or your mental state is not such, I don't think you will sustain.
Is it a period of like after you get done with one deal? Is there a type of a break in between that you can take or you get, or is it a simultaneous deals? You get over with one, you have the next one lined up.
Yeah. So I think generally at the junior level, which is the analyst and associate level, that's how it happens. I mean, once a deal is over, you will get staffed on another transaction. But you know, people do take cognizance of the fact that you've worked very hard for last 2 months, right? So you should get some downtime, and so they will make sure that whatever you're getting staffed on is not immediately going to put you in the burner again. So it'll be a slow steaming thing. Having said that, there have been occasions where just because people left or there was few people doing the job and there was so many deals coming in that you just have to do one after the other. But I would say, it always used to go like this. I mean, you're at your peak and working really hard, and then suddenly for 1 month, you're not doing much because there's no deal execution. You're just basically pitching, 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 which is not that time consuming. So it used to go like this, but at times it will go like this, and then it will go down. But yeah, I mean, generally people have become more, they become much more cognizant that people need to take some downtime.
We're extremely fortunate to have you on our podcast, and we hope to meet you again someday.
Sure. Thanks, Shed. Those were good questions, and I enjoyed answering your questions. All the best.
Thank you.